Five truly bizarre deaths.
Number 5.
Aeschylus. Considered the founder of tragedy, Aeschylus is the first of the three ancient Greek playwrights whose work still survives. He expanded the characters of a play so that there was conflict between them instead of actors solely interacting with the chorus. Sophocles and Euripides famously followed in his footsteps. While visiting Gela on the island of Sicily, legend has it that an eagle, mistaking Aeschylus a bald pate for a stone, dropped a tortoise on his head, killing him. Some accounts differ, stating that a stone was dropped on his head, the eagle mistaking his shining crown for an egg. This is not as far-fetched as it seems. The lammergeier or bearded vulture is native to the Mediterranean, and is known to drop bones and tortoises on rocks to break them open.
Number 4.
Attila the Hun. History's most brilliant tactician, warlord, and notorious villain, Attila the Hun conquered all of Asia by 450 AD. Using a combination of fierce combat and ruthless assimilation, Mongolia to the very edge of the Russian Empire fell to Attila and his armies. Known for his frugal eating and drinking habits, Attila must have thought that his own wedding was an occasion to celebrate, marrying a young girl named Ildiko. In 453 AD, he overindulged in both food and drink. Sometime after retiring for the evening, his nose started to bleed. Too drunk to notice, it continued to bleed, ultimately drowning him in his own blood.
Number 3.
Tycho Brahe. Famous as an alchemist and astronomer, Brahe's pioneering observations of planetary motion paved the way for Sir Isaac Newton to develop the theory of gravity. Unfortunately, brilliance and common sense do not always go hand in hand, the manner of his death being the case in point. Known to have a weak bladder and knowing that it was very bad form to leave the banquet table before the festivities concluded, Brahe still neglected to relieve himself before dinner. To compound matters, he was known to drink excessively, and this particular banquet was no exception. Too polite to ask to be excused, his bladder strained, causing a protracted, 11-day, agonizing death. Whether he died of a burst bladder or hyponatremia or mercury poisoning is now debated.
Number 2.
Horace Wells. An American dentist, born in Vermont and educated in Boston, Horace Wells was one of the pioneers in the field of anesthesia. Weary of screaming patients, it was known to upset him terribly. He often debated leaving the field of dentistry altogether. He was one of the first practitioners to see the value of nitrous oxide or laughing gas as an anesthetic. After a failed experiment and falling out of favor with the medical community, Wells became a traveling anesthetic salesman and European expert for his former partner, Gardner Quincy Colden. His investigations led to a chloroform addiction that would be his downfall. In 1848, delirious and deranged after a week of self-experimentation, Wells ran into the street and assaulted two prostitutes with sulfuric acid. After a failed experiment and falling out of favor with the medical community, Wells became a traveling anesthetic salesman and European expert for his former partner, Gardner Quincy Colden. His investigations led to a chloroform addiction that would be his downfall. In 1848, delirious and deranged after a week of self-experimentation, Wells ran into the street and assaulted two prostitutes with sulfuric acid.
Number 1.
Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon, statesman, philosopher, creator of the English essay, and advocate for the scientific revolution, was one of very few people to die as a result of one of their own experiments. In 1625, whilst gazing out the window at a snowy afternoon, Sir Francis Bacon had an epiphany of sorts. Why would snow not work as preservative of meat in much the same way salt is used? Needing to know an unheeding of the weather, Bacon rushed to town to purchase a chicken, brought it home and began the experiment. Standing outside in the snow, he killed the chicken and tried to stuff it with snow. The experiment was a failure. The chicken didn't freeze, and as a consequence of standing around in the freezing weather, Bacon developed a terminal case of pneumonia. Trying to stave off the inevitable, Bacon roasted and ate the chicken. That too was a failed experiment. He died